Today, we'll be looking at the movie Interstellar, published in 2014. Pretty major spoiler ahead, so be careful. That being said, let's start. Cooper, an Air Force pilot, has a dream about flying in a jet and then crashing. Cooper awakens and his daughter Murph talks about ghosts and asks him if he dreamt about the crash again, but Cooper refuses to speak about it. Donald, Cooper's father-in-law, prepares breakfast for the children. Tom, Murph's brother, teases his sister. Cooper and his kids leave for school, but on the way there, they pop a tyre. While Tom fixes the tyre, they see a military drone and decide to follow and capture it, since it no longer serves the military. While they chase the drone, Tom takes control of the steering wheel while Cooper gathers his equipment. They run through a field and almost fall off the edge of a cliff, but Cooper manages to stop the car in time. Cooper successfully hacks the drone, lands it, and wants to give it another, more useful purpose. Tom finally gets to school and leaves for class. Murph and Cooper stay in the car. Cooper goes to a parent-teacher conference and the principal says that Tom will one day be a great farmer. Cooper tells him that he'd prefer his son to go to college instead, but he's told that the country doesn't need college graduates more than farmers to combat the current famine. Murph's teacher shows concern for Murph's interest in the moon landing, which is considered a fake in this universe. The two school officials and Cooper discuss technological advances and Murph's behaviour, which Cooper says that he will fix by taking her to a baseball game. Cooper goes back to the car and tells Murph that she has been suspended. On their way back to the farm, they see tractors moving on their own. When they get to Murph's room, there are books all over the floor, and Murph says that it was a ghost communicating through Morse code. Later, Cooper fixes the tractors, but still can't figure out why they moved on their own in the first place. Cooper and Donald sit outside and talk about better times when there was an innovation every other day. They also discuss Cooper's son's desire to go to space. At a baseball game, Tom says that one day he'll take care of the farm. During the match, sirens go off and a sandstorm is revealed to be approaching the city, but everybody seems calm and leaves without making a fuss. On their way home, Murph realizes that she left the window open, and when they get in, sand is all over the floor. Cooper notices some strange patterns in the sand. The next day, Murph finds her father in her room. Cooper throws a coin on the floor and realizes that the ghost is just gravity. Then he understands that the sand is communicating through binary code, and he and Murph take out a map and circle out some coordinates. Cooper then prepares to leave and tells Murph that she is forbidden from coming, but she hides in the car, and Cooper is forced to bring her with him. Cooper and Murph make their way through the night to an abandoned camp. Cooper gets a flashlight shined on him and is confronted by a voice before being tased. He wakes up inside a room being interrogated by TARS, a tactical robot. Dr. Amelia Brand enters the room and she leads Cooper to a conference table with scientists and professors sitting around, together with Murph. Cooper reconnects there with Professor Brands. The father and daughter are asked how they made their way there. Murph said that gravity led them there, but Cooper refuses to say anything until their safety is guaranteed. The scientists then laugh and explain to the two that they're part of NASA. Professor Brands shows Cooper a rocket ship that the scientists are building. He explains to him that they're not receiving funding anymore for space exploration and that they are focusing their efforts on a way to fight the blight disease that's causing the famine. Brands introduces Cooper to the Endurance mission, the last of the Lazarus expeditions, NASA's last attempt to find another planet suitable for human life. After a while, Cooper agrees to be the Project Endurance's pilot. He gets to know that NASA has discovered a wormhole, possibly put there by some benevolent being outside their knowledge. 10 years ago, NASA sent 10 astronauts to another 10 planets, but only 3 sent signals back to Earth. Their mission had a Plan A and a Plan B, and Professor Brands explains them both. While Professor Brands explains to Cooper that NASA will be able to finish up their plans in time, he comes to trust Brands and puts all his faith in him. Back at home, Cooper has to explain to his daughter about his expedition, and Murph is saddened by the news that he'll leave, probably to never come back. The next morning, Murph and her father talk again, but she explains to him that during the night, the ghost sent another message which spells out, "Stay." Cooper does not listen to her and hugs his daughter. Cooper gives her a watch and explains to her that time in space is much slower than on Earth and that maybe when he'll come back, they'll be the same age. Murph, though, throws away the watch in anger. Outside, Cooper says goodbye to Tom and leaves the truck and his responsibilities to him. Murph tries to chase Cooper, but she's too late. Cooper and his crew, now on the rocket alongside TARS, leave Earth. In space, Cooper and Amelia joke around while Doyle, another crewmate, locks the hatch and docks the spacecraft. They power up another tactical robot, Case, and fire up the rotors, stabilising their space station. Romilly, the fourth crew member, feels unwell. Professor Brands calls the spaceship and wishes them luck for their 2-year mission away from Earth. The spaceship then spins away into the dark void. While Romilly gets ready for deep space, Cooper and Amelia talk about the other 3 astronauts they'll potentially meet. Amelia goes to his chamber and Cooper gets to talk with TARS, asking him if Amelia is in a relationship with another doctor, but TARS refuses to answer. Cooper sits down and films himself for his children before going into deep sleep. Back on Earth, Professor Brands visits Cooper's family and gives them the videotape, but Murph isn't interested in it. Brands talks to Donald about taking Murph under his wing. After some years, Cooper is still in outer space with his crew. He watches some videos his family sent him and then talks with Romilly, who appeared to be paranoid. Cooper lends him his earphones. Doyle and Cooper check out some images of the wormhole. Amelia tells the crew that they'll reach the wormhole in a few hours. Under stress, they start going at insane speeds and the space station gets increasingly unstable. During their high-speed flight, Amelia spots what seems to be a hand reaching out to her and tries to grasp it. The spacecraft then slows down and flies smoothly once more. The crew then has a meeting to decide which planet to visit next. They lost contact with Brands and have to decide on their own. One of the options is a planet near Gargantua, a black hole, where 1 hour equals 7 years on Earth. Doyle and Cooper argue about the decision, but the crew finally comes to agree on a middle ground. They will land on the opposite side of Gargantua. The crew prepares to land. TARS accompanies the crew on land while Romilly stays behind. On their way down, they encounter violent turbulence. While approaching the planet's surface, they notice that they're going towards what appears to be a big ocean. Cooper expertly stops the landing craft just inches before crashing into the water. While they look around for debris from a crashed satellite, Cooper notices what appears to be mountains on the horizon are in reality huge waves. First, they notice some waves moving away from them, but as they turn around, they see another one making its way towards them. Amelia finds some other data from the previous mission, but falls. TARS then transforms into a wheel and picks her up, transporting her back onto the ship. Doyle gets brought away by the water, and the rest of the crew manages just in time to get back on board. They survive, but the ship is badly damaged. Inside, Cooper shouts at Amelia for wasting so much time collecting data and not coming back when she was supposed to. They'd already spent hours on the planet, meaning that now Cooper's daughter is an adult. They also realised that the data was almost intact because the craft crashed only some hours before they arrived there. The remaining crew barely makes it out alive. Back onto the ship, they are greeted by an older Romilly, who tells them that 23 years have passed since they first landed on the planet. The two are in disbelief. Romilly also tells them that he gathered as much information on black holes as he could, but could not send it back to Earth. Cooper watches 23 years' worth of videotapes from his family, watching Tom grow from an adolescent to a married man to finally a father who lost his offspring. Donald had died and Murph has grown distant. He also watches a video from Murph. It's her birthday, and she starts the videotape by cursing her father, ending the message by asking Cooper to return. Murph, back on Earth, finishes up filming her message. She's together with Professor Brands, now confined to a wheelchair. The two go back to working together on the still unsolved theory. Murphy, while watching the equation, finally notices that they've been looking at it wrong until then, but Brands had already noticed. She asked why he never changed it. On the spacecraft, they decided on which planet to visit next. Amelia opts for the closer planet, but Cooper votes for Dr. Mann's planet since it is the one that still continuously sends out messages. Romilly warns Cooper about Amelia's bias towards Edmund's planet since the two entertained a relation. Although Amelia tries to convince the two with an emotional speech, they remain fixed on visiting Dr. Man's planet first, and they plan a route. Back on Earth, Tom has become a farmer and lives together with his wife Lois and Tom's son Coop, who suffers from respiratory complications. Murph comes to visit. Back in space, Amelia still is mad at Cooper and says that, should Dr. Man's planet be unsuitable, they'd waste millions of lives back on Earth. Murph, in the meantime, visits a dying Brands and tells him that she'll finish their work. But Brands tells her that the theory was all a lie and that the Endurance mission wasn't meant to get back. Murph, frustrated and deluded, sends a videotape to her father. The crew is now approaching Dr. Man's planet. On the surface, they spot a base and enter. Inside, they find Dr. Man, deep sleeping, and wake him up. He immediately cries at the sight of another human being and explains to them his findings. There's now no breathable air on the planet's outer surface, but on a lower surface, life might be possible. He believes other alien life forms already inhabit the planet, but has not yet seen them. Tars requests Amelia to show the video message Murph sent, and they all get to know about what Professor Brand said. Nobody knew about the things Murph is talking about, and Dr. Mann states that he resolved the equation way back before leaving the Earth, but proving it won't solve anything. They need information about the inside of the black hole to put it into practical use, but that is impossible due to the laws of nature. Mann tries to justify Brand's actions, but Cooper refuses to believe that and still wants to make his way back to Earth. Murph, back on Earth, explains Brand's lies to her colleague Getty. He says that the human race needs to know their fate, but Murph refuses to say anything else about it. She still believes there's a chance everything will work out. Murph decides that it's time she solved the messages the ghost sent her as a child, while Getty gets to understand the worsening situation Tom's family are finding themselves in. Getty berates them for not leaving and gets punched for it. Murph asks Tom if he'll wait until the second son dies as well before leaving the place, but gets told to leave as well. On their way back, Murph burns some of Tom's crops to make him leave the house and go back in. Cooper, on Man's planet, prepares to leave for Earth, and Romilly tries to find a way to collect information about what's inside the black hole. He says that sending Tars in would get them the information they need, and Tars accepts, willing to sacrifice himself for humanity. Cooper accompanies Man through the planet to find some suitable area for the modules. They get to talk about humanity's survival instincts while they walk around. When they approach the edge of a cliff, Man pushes Cooper down, trying to make him fall to his death, but Cooper grabs a rock. Man tries to kick him down, but Cooper pulls him towards him and they both fall. On the ground, they fight, and Man tells Cooper that he cannot allow him to go back with the ship, and that all the data he had sent is fake and the planet is really not habitable. During the fight, Man cracks Cooper's helmet, leaving him exposed to the toxic air, and leaves. Cooper crawls to a radio and calls for Amelia. Case and Amelia find him right on time and he gets saved. Cooper tells them about Man's lies. Romilly, in the meantime, is modifying Tars for his last mission, and while going through Man's data in another identical robot, he understands that something is not right. Then an explosion happens and Romilly dies. Tars makes his way back to the ship and tells Amelia and Cooper about Romilly's fate. Man turns back his communications device and hears Cooper and Amelia. Dr. Man tries to board the ship to go back to Endurance. Cooper calls to him through their comms, but he does not answer. Case informs them that auto-docking is off, so it will be extremely difficult for Man to dock. Man tries to manually dock his craft, and he fails, but still wants to open the hatch. Cooper begs him not to do it, since this will result in the airlock exploding. Man opens the hatch nonetheless, and a good portion of the Endurance station explodes, with debris making its way towards Cooper's ship. Cooper takes control and wants to dock the ship, while Endurance flies away at incredible speeds. Amelia says it's impossible, but Cooper manages to dock it perfectly. Cooper's ship starts to rotate very quickly, together with the station. While Amelia passes out, Cooper finally manages to stabilize the ship and bring it away from the planet's stratosphere. Case then says that they're coming dangerously close to Gargantua. They move through the damaged ship to the generator, and Amelia says that the power on the ship is stable, but Cooper tells her that the navigation systems are destroyed. They won't make it back to Earth safely, but might manage to get to Edmund's planet. They prepare the ship and have to get rid of any weight they can, so they need to throw Tars away. Amelia won't do it, but Tars says that its only goal is to save humanity. Endurance flies at incredible speeds. Tars leaves the ship and Amelia panics when she hears that Cooper's capsule will detach itself as well. Cooper is sacrificing himself for Amelia so that she may get to Edmund's planet. Cooper falls through space and passes out, only to be awakened by an onboard computer telling him to eject himself. He does and falls through what seems to be an endless room. He grabs one of the walls and notices that it's made out of books. He then punches one book out, revealing a young Murph watching the library. We then learn that the ghost was him all along and that he is now in space where he can see all of his past actions. He tries to communicate through Morse code, as we have seen near the start of the movie. Back on Earth, Murph is going through an old notebook and finds some messages she received as a child. She also realizes that the ghost was her father. We get to know that Tars survived, and he calls Cooper and explains to him that he's now in a dimension created by benevolent beings where time is physical. Cooper realizes that he can send a message to Murph, since gravity travels through time, and she realizes the same thing and hopes that her father sends another message. He then asks Tars for the coordinates of the NASA center and communicates them to old Murph and Cooper through some sand. He realizes that the benevolent beings had chosen Murph to save humanity. Cooper then communicates through an old watch he gave Murph when she was a child. Murph finds it and realizes it's Morse code. Through her father's messages, she understands how to make Plan A work. She executes her calculations and kisses Getty out of ecstasy. Cooper realizes that his plan worked and the benevolent beings now close the dimension he is in. These benevolent beings are understood to be humans who have survived and evolved to something beyond humanity. After light collapses onto Cooper, he wakes up, reaching out his hand to Amelia. He also was the white hand reaching out to the crew on Endurance inside the wormhole. He wakes up in a hospital room and sees a warped world outside his window. He gets told by one of the doctors that he is now in Cooper's station near Saturn. He thanks them for naming it after him. The nurse in the room chuckles and they explain to him that the station is named after his daughter, Murph, who's coming to see him. He goes around the station and marvels at how far humans have come. He also visits the old house, which serves as a museum that recounts Murph's life. He sees Tars and tries to fix it. The next day, Cooper gets to meet a now old Murph, who cries when she finally sees her father again and tells him to find Amelia. Cooper and Tars then prepare to board a ship to reunite with Amelia and Case. We hope you enjoyed our video today. If you did like this video, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with the latest and interesting videos.